In this session, we'll learn about page object model. So page object model. This topic is not related to test engine. So test engine we have done, like we have seen test engine listeners in the last session, right? So with that, like we have covered all concepts within test engine. Now in today's session, we'll discuss about page object model. Page object model is a design pattern. It is a design pattern where we'll maintain all the page elements. So page elements and the corresponding action methods in a separate class for each web page. So we do have many pages, like, so when we wanted to automate something, an application, a web application, so it could have multiple web pages to automate. So what we do using page object model is, so in the page object model, we actually create one class dedicated .java file for one web page. And in that, we'll actually put all the web elements and action methods in it. And then we'll have the validations in a separate class, which we have been calling it as a test class, right? So we write in the test class, we write the test methods, right? So there we'll still have the same test class. We'll have the test methods even, but we'll have only validations in it. So we'll not have the locators and the action methods in it. For example, so till now what we used to have for a test case. So test case, and then in that file, we used to have the locators. We used to find the web elements and have the locators in it. And also we used to have the action methods or the test methods, right? So these action methods will have, we usually have the validations in it. We interact with the elements, interaction, and also validation. This is how we used to have it. So till now, what we used to do, we used to write a test class where we used to have the locators of the web page and also the corresponding action methods to interact with the web elements. We used to use this locator for interaction, and also we used to write the validations and the action methods. So this we used to call it as a one test case, and we put this code in a test class. We used to call it as a test class, and we create a test XML for that, and we run the test XML. And it's like this, we can have n number of test classes is what we discussed, right? Now, let us actually see the problem of the current approach. So, if you observe, there's some problem here with the current approach. For example, I have right some three test classes or three test cases, right? So these are my test cases, and I do have something called like the actual web pages. These are my, say for example, this is my web page. For example, this could be my login, some create account, some view account, like that. For example, this is my test case, which actually tests the login. I'll call it as login test. And this is my, for example, this is my create account test. For example, this is my view account test. Now, and these are the tests, right? So these are our test cases or test classes. Now, we wanted to have this as, these are the web pages. These are the web pages. So this is my login page. This is my create account page. This is view account page. So till now, what we used to do was like when we create this test class, we used to actually, call this like say for example, within this test class, we used to write the page elements, right? Locators. We used to have the locators. So each test class, let's put it here. So each test class will have a corresponding. So one test class here will have a corresponding locators, and also the action methods within it. This is one test class. We have seen this is one test class, right? So now one test class is like this, locators and action methods, right? So, and what we used to do, like if you observe, we used to actually have this login test, right? And in order to have this test class, say for example, this is login test, right? So I'll locate the web elements. I'll have the elements here and also the action methods. So in order to have the elements, what we need to do, we need to actually get this from login page. So this is web page, login page is a web page, and we get the web elements for this login page, and we actually write our code or the elements which we actually locate them in the test class, right? And also we write the corresponding action methods within the test class. And we also write the validations within this test class, right? Next, come to this test2. So, which is create account test. Now, if I wanted to test this create account test, so whenever you are writing a test case, so a test case is independent. So it has to have an end-to-end flow, meaning like you have login test, right? And how do you actually test the create account? Create account has to be tested by actually logging into the application itself, right? So without logging, you can't create the account, right? So in this case also, this is also a test case again, right? So this is my test case 2, let's say for example, right? So this is my test case 2. So again, for this test case also, like I have to create the again. So this is my test case 2, this is my test case 3. Let's say for example, this is my test case 1. So all in order to actually, what happens like, so this is my login test. I have to get the web elements from this. 1 second. So this login page, we get the web elements. We write the web elements locators here in the test login test, and we also write the corresponding action method file. Now test case 2, we wanted to test create account. So for create account also, like again in this test case also, like we need to actually automate the login page, right? So for that we actually locate the elements again, which are of login page, and also we write the corresponding action methods. Along with that, the create account web page. So what are all the elements present in create account page? We will actually write those elements and also write the corresponding actions within the test case 2, which is create account test. All right. Say for example, view account test. So this is another test case, completely third test case, where say for example, it might require creating account. So in order to view the account, for example, assume we need to create the account first, and then we can only view the account after creation. So in that case, what happens? In order to test this test case, view account test. So first you need to log in and then create the account page and also view the account page, right? So these will be the steps for the test case 3. So do you see any problem here? So we have two major problems here in this approach. There is nothing wrong doing like this, right? So we have been doing like this till now, right? Creating the test cases, and then whenever we are required to locate the elements, we used to locate the elements, we used to write the corresponding action methods to interact with the web elements. This was fine. But if you observe in this case, right? So each test case, like there is some redundant code. So if you observe test case 1 is fine. So you are actually locating the elements and interacting with the elements of login page. But if you observe the test case 2 here, create account test, we need to log into the web page. Without that, we can't create the account page. So that's the reason what we did. We actually automating the login page as well. But we already automated the login page in test case 1. So there is no reusability. We are actually locating the web elements of the login page again and writing the action item. Say, for example, login page will have username, password, and click on login button, right? So we have to repeat all those actions as well in the create account test. And the create account page web elements, its own elements and its own action methods. Anyway, we need to write in the test case 2, right? And again, see, for example, test case 3. We are repeating login page, create account page, which we are already done, locating the elements and writing the action methods. But test case 3, it's independent and it has no clue about the other test cases. So what we need to do, we need to again repeat the same code, login page and create account page in the view account test. And along with that, it will have its own code of view account page, locating the web elements of the particular page and also interacting with the elements of the view account page, right? So if you see clearly, there is a redundancy. There are two problems here. There are two problems. Clearly, we can see two problems here. What are the problems? The first one is redundant code, or you can think it of like redundant locators or elements, right? Because you are actually locating the elements again and again, which are already there, right? For a separate test case, here we are actually locating the same elements and same locators again and again, right? So that's the main problem. So you might not see a problem with few cases, but let's assume you have some 50 test cases or 100 test cases, right? So each of those test cases might require the login page, because without login, you can't actually test any functionality. So in all those test cases, you will definitely repeat this login page. At least the login page will be repeated, right? So the code for that will be redundant. And the second problem is, so if there are any changes, right? So if there are any changes to the web page, for example, this login page, say for example, the button label was submit and now we wanted to call that as login. Just assume that's an example, right? So in that case, what happens? We need to make that change in all the test classes, because the login page might have used in all the test cases, right? Test classes, right? So just for example, you might be using some label, or say for example, that button has been located, the location of the button has been changed. So with that, the ID or the button locator might have been changed. So in that case, what happens? The button web element has to be corrected in all these test classes, right? So there, say for example, there are 100 test cases. In all of these test cases of test classes of 100 test classes, so you need to modify this change. You need to modify the web element for the login button, right? So that's very tedious job to do, right? So if there are any changes to any web page, one web page, so you have to locate where that changes in all the test classes, and you have to make that change in all the test classes, which is like a tedious job, right? So these are the two major problems we see with the current approach. So the current approach of having both locators and action methods within the same test class. And also test class will have action methods and also validations, right? So action methods, just assume action methods will have the interaction with the elements as well as validations here, right? So with this, what happens? We also have the validations here. So in the current approach, we do have the validations as well. Locators, action methods, and validations. Now we wanted to actually, so this the problem you understood, right? So the problem here is, so there are two problems, two major problems. So the two major problems are redundant code, that is we are actually locating the elements again and again, right? And also if there are any change, right? Changes to the web page, changes to the page, then that will be a problem. So if there are any changes to the page, then that will be a problem, right? Because that modifications has to be done in all the test classes. So these are the two major problems. So how are we going to resolve this? So we can actually solve this problem using page object model. So what page object model says? So let's see that. So the same thing in a different way. So for example, I will just clear this and create it again. So the same approach, right? Now what we'll do here is we'll separate the web elements and the corresponding action methods. So what does that mean? Is we'll still have the web pages. We wanted to automate the web pages, right? So this will still be there, and we do have the test cases. So these are my test class. Say for example, page object models and test cases are still there. So test cases will still be there. These will be used only for the validations. Now, for example, these are the test classes. We have the test classes, and here we'll have the these we call it as page object classes. Page object classes, where this page object classes will have inside it will have the web elements located, and also we'll have the action methods within it. Action methods are nothing but the interaction, like how we interact with the web elements. Those like if it is a button, we perform dot click action, right? If it is an input field, we use dots and keys method to pass some input into the input field, like that. Those are called as action methods. So page object classes like this we'll have it, right? So the same part we'll have it everywhere in all the page object classes. So this is my first one would be my this will be my login page. So this will be login and create account, and this will be the view account. And we do have the web pages. We have seen the web pages, right? So these are the web pages, the actual web pages, which we call it as this is login page. This is create account page. This is view account page. And what do the test classes contain? Test classes will contain the actual validations. It will have only validations in it. Nothing more than that. It will have the validations. This will be the test case 1. Test case 2 and test case 3. Like this, we can have a number of test cases. All right. Now, if you observe, so if you see, what did we do? We separated web elements, action pages, and validations. We used to have entire all the things in test classes. We just separated web elements and its corresponding login action methods in separate classes called page object classes. So we'll have one class per one web page. So that's what the design pattern says. So for this login page, we'll have one web page, one class, one page object class. We call it as page object class, where we'll maintain the web elements and the corresponding action methods for that particular web page called login page in this case, right? In the same way, we actually create another page object class for create account page, view account page. Like this, for n number of web pages, we'll have n number of page object classes. In those page object classes, what we'll have the web elements of this particular web page and also its corresponding action methods. Only we'll have only that thing, right? So strictly only web elements and the corresponding action methods, nothing more than that. So we are not going to write the validations again, right? So only the web elements and the corresponding action methods for that particular web page. So like this, if we have like n number of web pages, we'll create n number of page object classes. So page object class is nothing but a new .java class. That's all, where we'll have the web elements and the action methods in it, right? Now, test classes will have only validations. Now we'll have the test in the test classes like test case 1, test case 2, test case 3. So like this, we can have n number of test cases, and each test case will have only validations written. Say for example, test case 1, I wanted to validate login page. So I'll have login page validations here. That's all. And what do we need to call? We need to call only page object class of login page, the corresponding login page of page of login page. The login page will have the corresponding page object class, right? So we just need to call the methods within it from the test case 1, which is login page validations. Test case 2 will be the create account, right? So in that case, what we do, we only call this page object class like this. Now, test case 3, if you wanted to interact, I will just call the methods of these 3, right? 3 classes. So now if you observe, it might look the same, but it's different, right? So there is no redundant code. Here we have written the code, right? Earlier, code once. See, login page, web elements, and action methods are there in one class. And test case 1 is using those action methods, right? And test case 2 is also using the same methods. Observe. So the same class we have. Test case 2 is also just calling the methods within the page object class, right? It is, so this is what like reusability is. So test case 2 is also interacting with the page object class 2, which is related to the create account page. And test case 3 also need login page create account page. So it will just call the methods which are already created in the page object class for login page and also page object class of create account page. See, it just need to call the methods. That's all. It don't need this test case 3 now need not create the web elements and also the action methods for the other web pages. So strictly, it can actually call the methods of the login pages and create account page and just write the validations for only test case 3. That's the actual purpose of test case 3, right? Test class 3 or test case 3, right? So we will have only validations for the view account page. For all the prerequisites, we'll just call the methods which are already created in the as the page object classes, which were written one, which were already present one per web page, right? So for one page web page, we'll have one page object class. So this way, we actually are, we actually solve the two problems. The two problems which we had earlier, right? So we had two problems, if you observe. What were the two problems? Redundant code, right? So now the solution is, we have the solution. So what's the solution? The solution says we have what's the solution? Reusability is the solution. And how did we achieve this? Achieve that. So reusability we achieved by having the page object class written for each web page. So for each one web page, we have one page object class. So with that, we can achieve reusability, thereby solving the redundant code problem, which we had earlier in the traditional approach, right? And the other problem, we indirectly solve the other problem as well. That is, so if there is some change in the login page or some create account page in any web page, right? So we just need to make the change in only one class. page object class, right? So the corresponding page object class will only be affected, the web elements of it. We just need to make changes only in that corresponding page object class. We don't need to modify any other page object class or any other test class. Only at one place we can update or we can modify the changes, right? So that's the solution. So single place updation or single place modification. Right? What's the solution? So reusability, thereby avoiding redundant code, and also because we have the page object class, right? We'll use the already created methods within the page object classes, and single place modification. So if they in future, if there are any modifications in the web pages, we just need to modify the corresponding page object class for that web page. That's all. Nothing more than that. So at one place, single place, we'll make the modification. So that will be taken effect for uh, all the places where that method was used, right? So single place modification. So this is how we actually solve the two major problems which do exist in the traditional approach. So these are the benefits of using the page object classes. I just saved in these images also. So I'll share these images as well to you. So is that clear? Why we need page object classes, or what are the problems we have with the traditional approach, and why we need the page object classes, what are the benefits of using it. All right. So now let me clear this. Now let's understand with an example. For that, we need to know there are two methods. Two methods. Using two methods, we can create page object classes. In two methods, we can create the page object classes. So what are the two methods? So the first method is without using PageFactory. And the second one is using PageFactory. There are two methods. First method is we can use PageFactory, right? Without using PageFactory. The second approach or the second method is using PageFactory. We'll first see without using PageFactory. So for that, let's actually create a class. First, we'll create a new package and we'll see an example of that. Day 41. I'll create a new class. So we'll take an example of simple example we'll take. So I wanted to automate this login page. So for that, we need to locate the username and password, and we wanted to click on this login button. So that will be our test case or test class, right? And this will be our test. So for that, what we need to do, we first need to create the, so according to what we learned just now, we wanted to first create the page object class for the login page. So let's do that. I'll create a page object class for my login page. This will be the login page for, so this will be the page object class for login page. Shall we call it like this, login page object class? Or I'll just call it as login page. Even that should be good enough. So which says that it's a page object model, page object for the login page. All right. So now you have to remember there are three things when we are creating a page object class. So a constructor, locators, and the action methods. So three sections, right? So constructor, locators, and action methods. So constructor, first we need to use the constructor. These are all like what the design pattern says. So design pattern is something like, which will be developed by actually having different solutions. There could be some different solutions for some problem, but finally there could be some conclusion that this will be the best and optimized solution. So there could be some best and optimized solution for some problem. So that will be considered as a design pattern for that problem. and we have to use that pattern or that approach for solving the problem. So for the current problem, there is the solution and the design pattern, which is called as page object model design pattern, right? So that's what we are doing now. And according to that design, so each web page will have one page object class, and the page object class is divided into three sections: a constructor, locators, and action methods, right? Locators, action methods, we know. Constructor is the addition. So what constructor, anyway, we know what constructor takes here is WebDriver instance. It takes WebDriver instance, and we just need to initialize it to the driver of this class. So we need a driver, WebDriver. At the class level, we declare a WebDriver, and we are going to use that in the constructor. So when we create a object for this login page, so we'll actually pass a WebDriver to it so that the WebDriver within this login page gets initialized. So that is what is all about the constructor. So when we create a login page object, so because we wanted to use the action method, we wanted to use the methods of the login web page in the test case, the actual test case, right? So how do we actually call these action methods within the login page? We definitely need to create the object for this login page class. So when we are creating the object for this login page, what we do is we also pass the WebDriver to it. So which browser we wanted to run. So that code we'll write it like how we write it for the any test case, right? Test class, we write the setup method, right? Like that, we'll create the setup method in the test class. There we'll actually instantiate the driver, and we'll also create the object for this login page. And while creating the login page object, we'll actually pass the WebDriver instance to it. So what happens with that is this driver, what's the meaning of this driver? So it actually indicates that we are representing the driver of this class. This WebDriver is within this is local to this login page, right? But when we say this driver, this is actually pointing to the instance variable of the class. This one, right? This is what we learned when we are discussing about this keyword, right? So this dot driver is this one. Driver here is the actual driver, which is local to this method. This dot driver is the actually refers to the instance variable of the class. All right. So now once we have ready with the constructor, now the second part is locators. So how do we locate the elements? So usually what we do driver.findElement. Okay, we usually do driver.findElement, right? So here we need to create the object for this, that's the reason it is not coming. But usually how we actually write the locate the elements. So this is how we usually locate the elements, the XPath of the XPath value here, right? So this is how we actually find the elements or locate the elements on the web page, right? Now this will be divided into, so this is not how we locate in the page object class. So here we will follow a different approach for that. So let's actually take, let me show you. So let's inspect username first. We wanted to locate all these three, right? Username, password, and login button. So for example, I'll use XPath for this. For example, by.xpath. This is by.xpath, right? Now, what we usually do, we write driver.findElement of by.xpath, and then we'll write the corresponding action. We'll write the corresponding locator, how we found it, right? So this is how we usually do. With what this returns, this actually returns the web element. This is fine. This we know, right? This actually returns the web element. Now, we are not going to do like that. So we only write the XPath, like we only, we only locate the XPath, or we only locate the element like this using by.xpath. So this has to be closed. So what does this return? This actually returns a by object. So this actually returns a by object. So driver.findElement returns web element. This actually returns the web element, right? Because using WebDriver instance, we call the find method, find element method. Find element method actually finds the element using this locator by.xpath and whatever we have provided as this path, this address, this we call it as xpath. And this complete by.xpath is representing the locator or the address of the web element, right? When we pass the address of the element to the find element using the driver instance, then the driver is able to find that particular element. So this is divided into two sections, right? Finding the element and in order to find the element, so we need to pass a locator of that web element. Two parts, right? Locator and finding the actual element, right? Now we'll divide. So just consider that now and this locator, right? So this locator we need to write first and so what's the locator? By.xpath in this example, right? So this will actually return the by object. So whenever we say by.xpath, by.id, by.class name, anything, so that will actually return a by object. So we'll capture that into some by object like this. And then in the action methods, we'll actually use this like this. Driver.findElement, and then we'll use the username locator here. And this will be the username, right? So we'll pass some username here, something like this. So this is how we'll be using it now. So earlier, it's simple. Like we used to have the driver.findElement and also the locator. We used to pass it, right? Instead of that, so we are just separating this. We are just separating it and having that held in some variable by object, right? And then anyway, we are passing that to the find element. So if you observe the highlighted part in green, so what it represents, this one, right? If you put this here, so then that will become the same old one, right? We are just separating the locator and the find element method because we wanted to locate, we wanted to have this in the locator section and use this locator in the action methods. In the action methods, we'll actually write this code of finding the element. So let's do that now. So this is the locator, right? Now I wanted to like this, I wanted to locate elements for all the, so I wanted to have the locators for all the web elements, right? By.xpath, and then we'll get the xpath for password as well. So this has to be held in some object, by object. So if you see here, by.xpath, so it is actually returning by object. This is username locator. So in the same way, we wanted to locate the other elements. This is by dot password, by dot xpath of okay, password like this, right? And we'll capture that into a by object for the password. Like this, we need to get the xpath for or address for each web element. So this is like a tedious job, right? So having writing like this each element, so you can even get all the web elements at once. So for all these web elements, so if you wanted to have the by.xpath in this format, so what we can do is we can actually write something like this. So by.xpath xpath value, so you can put it here. So okay, let me show you from the beginning. So right click on it on any web element and you see something like this, right? So mouse over on one of the web elements and select selectors up here and put something. So here you'll have this option, right? So just select the format in which you wanted. We wanted the format as by.xpath and the xpath value of it, right? So put it here like this and then we want it in this format, by dot xpath and the value of it, xpath value. We need it in this format, right? So you need to click on this. So first what we need to do is, once we actually click, so once you select the selector sub, you will not see this option. So you will inspect this web element and then go to selector sub and you see a second option here. So you will have small icons here on the right to the selector sub, right? The second icon, if you hover on it, so you'll see something called set driver command to append on selectors. So click on it. So upon clicking on it, that you'll get some input field here. Enter the driver command. So you'll just put this something like this because we need that XPath in this format for all the web elements. So we'll provide that first. And then observe. There is some other icon below that. So which is called click to generate locators page and multiple selectors. This will record. This will record the locators. Now see, I click on this, right? And then now see, observe. So I inspect the elements, username, password like this. See, password has come. So in order to get the username, just delete this, all the rows and go again and visit again the web page. You have to be specific to the web element. See, username, password, login button. See, I got all the three. Now, just copy it. Click to copy all XPaths. So I'll click on it and that's it. So you can just come here and have it in your code. And anyway, you need to write your own variables. So this we need to do anyway, like this. But this part, you can do it at one go, is what my point is, okay? And you'll have this left-hand side variables, by variables, right? So that we'll anyway have it, right? So let me show you again one more time. So if you wanted to get all the web elements, say for example, you have 10 web elements on the web page and you wanted to find the XPath, but we need XPath in this way, like by.xpath. In this format, we wanted to have it in the page object class. So how do you get it is, so this is just an easy method. You can still go ahead with the traditional approach for each web element as well. This will make your job easier. So go to selector sub. You see a second icon here, set driver command to append on selector. So just select it. So you'll get an option. So whatever format you want, right? So whatever format you want the XPath, so you'll provide that like this. And then you will have a third icon which says click to generate locators page and multiple selectors. Click on that icon and then now try to inspect the element, each web element for which you wanted the XPath for, right? So just delete it if you are not getting it in the order and try to inspect each web element. For each web element, what I'm doing, I'm clicking on this arrow, inspect element, and then click, and then mouse hovering or clicking on the actual web element for which I wanted the locator for. Like this, you can actually get the locators. See, for all the web elements like this, you can get all the locators and then copy, and you can have those in your code. So easy method. All right. Now let's go back to our code. So this is what we need for the login button. So I'll call it as login button locator. So these are only the locators. Now we'll actually use these locators in the action method. So action methods, what we'll have is, so we'll have set username. Here we'll actually call the actual find element method, driver.findElement. And we just need to pass the locator to it because we already found the locator, right? We already have the locator. So we don't need to repeat by.xpath and all. We already captured that in the username locator dot send keys and pass the username parameter to it. In the same way, we'll have two more methods. So public void set password. driver.findElement and password locator dot send keys password. Next, public void login button click or click button click login. This will not take any parameters. It's only click, right? So driver dot find element login button locator dot click. So this is the action. See, this is all it is about page object class. So we have created a page object class for login page. So see how easy it is. Like we just need to declare a WebDriver object, and then we'll create a constructor, 3 sections: constructor, locators, and action methods. What's a constructor? Constructor, we need it to actually pass a WebDriver instance so that the WebDriver instance will be initialized. So we'll come to this again when we create the test class. When we create the test class, we'll create the object for this, right? So we'll revisit it again. For now, just think it of like we need to create a constructor for each page object class, and we have to pass a WebDriver to it, the constructor, and that driver we need to use it to instantiate the WebDriver for that particular web page. All right. Then locators and action methods. So locators, in the locators we use like we need to locate the elements and we need to capture them in the by objects like this, right? And then in the action methods we'll just use the locators. Anyway, in the action methods, we'll use the same format like driver.findElement. The same findElement method we'll use, but we'll just pass the locators which we already located. So if you observe, username locator is actually representing this whole part, right? So if you get this and put it here, it will be the same which we used to have earlier, right? Till now. So we just separated the locator and the actual findElement call, right? So nothing new here. So we just separated the locator from the methods. So in the action methods, we'll actually use the locator like this. And like this, we'll have the action method for each web element, like we can have the methods written like this. That's all. This completes the page object class. Now let's actually create an actual test case. So test class. I'll call that as login test. Now observe what we need to do in the login test. So earlier we used to locate the web elements. We used to write the action methods in it, right? Now observe what we'll do. So first thing what we'll do is we need the WebDriver instance. So we'll create the WebDriver. We'll declare the WebDriver object, right? And then what we'll do, we'll actually write a setup method. These are like common, which we have seen in the last session. So this will be called only once before class. Setup method, right? So what we usually do in the setup method, we instantiate the driver to Chrome driver if you wanted to launch the Chrome browser, and then if you wanted to have the implicit time wait, right? So we'll add implicit wait. Implicit wait of maybe 10 seconds like that. And then we'll navigate to the particular web page using the URL of it, driver.get method. And if you wanted to maximize the window, you can do that. Driver.manage.window.maximize. These are nothing new. So setup method is done. Now we wanted to actually write the actual test, right? So actual validation for the login test. So I'll specify this with an annotation at the rate test so that this will be considered as a test method by test engine. All right. Now see, now what we wanted to do. We wanted to test the login page. So how do we test the login page? So for that, we used to actually write the driver.findElement of username and then perform an action using .send keys, right? Now we did that already in the page object model, like driver.findElement is done, right? So, and also the method is also there for actually calling the method send keys. So this is already there. So we don't need to do it again. So we just need to call the set username so that we can pass the input to the username. So how do we call this method in this class? So there is a method called setUsername. We can call this method and pass the username to it. So that will be actually passed to the username field, right? We wanted to call this method. So in order to call this method from another class, so it's a public. So how do I call it? It's not static. So we definitely need to create an object for the login page. So login page, let me create a login page. New login page of. Now observe, we'll pass the driver to it. So what is driver here? Observe. So this driver is present within the class instance variable within the login test. So this is the test class. WebDriver is within it. And what did we do in the setup before class? Before any test is ran within this test class, we are this before class annotation method will be ran, right? The setup method will be called, and here it will be initialized with the Chrome driver. So it is initialized with the Chrome driver. So this driver we are passing it to the login page. So with this, what happens? So this login page will be called, the constructor will be called, and the driver, which is already initialized, remember. So the driver has been initialized with the Chrome driver. That instance has been passed to the login page. And that will be captured by this WebDriver driver, which is a local variable to this constructor. And that is assigned to the this dot driver. This dot driver is again the driver of the particular class, right? This instance variable of this class. So finally, we'll have this driver initialized within this login page. And whenever we are using the method, right? So the driver, this when we are representing driver here, this is within this web page or within this class, right? So that will be used to find the element. Hope it is clear, right? So this you need to get it. Why we have WebDriver, declared in the test class as well as in the login page. So we definitely need to have the WebDriver instance to locate or the find the elements. So we are instantiating it in the test class. When we wanted to perform the action, only then we'll instantiate the driver and then pass that instance to the actual page object class whenever it is required, right? So with this, what happens? We actually instantiated the driver and also call the constructor for that page object class. All right. So this is ready now. Now, what we need to do? We just need to call the methods, set username and pass the username. That's it. And set password. So we have set the username and password already, right? And this you need to call the login button. That's it. We are done with test login. See how easy it has become, right? We are just calling the methods which are already present in the page object class. Now, if you wanted to add the assertions, you can do so. Like assert equals. What I wanted to add, what I wanted to validate is get current URL. We'll get the current URL and we'll match it. We'll actually compare it. So once the login is successful, so if you observe standard user password, observe the URL. So once we log in, you see a different URL, right? So sourcedemo.com inventory.html. So we'll get this and then have this validated. So if it is successful login, then the current URL has to be this. So that is what we are matching with, and we are using assert equals method. So the first parameter will be compared with the second parameter. If it matches, the test case will be passed, or else the test method will be failed, will be marked to fail, right? All right. So this is our test login. So how simple the code has become, observe. So we are just calling the methods and passing the parameters, right? Passing the values to it. That's all. Now, what we wanted to do after the test. So you can, like this, you can have a number of tests added to your test class. Within the login page itself, if you wanted to, check some logo here, you can check. If you wanted to get the title of it, like that. You can add a number of test cases. And finally, we'll have the teardown method, which we wanted to run once after the test completion, only once. what we wanted to do here is we wanted to just close the browser. All right. So now we are done, right? Before class and after class we'll done only once. This is the actual test which will run. And for that, what did we do? We actually we actually called the login page object. So because we wanted to test login page, so we just pass the driver instance to the login page constructor. So the object has been created for login page. Using those objects, we already have the methods in the page object model. We are just calling those methods. That's all. And what are validations we wanted? If we have any validations, we can add the validations also. So in the test method, in the test class, so we'll have simple code of, calling the page object methods, action methods, and the validations. That's all. Now let's execute this. So can I execute it like this? Run as test engine test. Yeah, now observe. So test login has been passed, right? So it is successfully passed, meaning we are able to actually achieve the test class by writing, we separated the test class and uh, we actually separated the web elements and the action methods from the actual test validation. So this was our test case, right? So we didn't write any web element locators or any action interaction methods here, right? But still we are able to execute this test class by separating it, the web elements and action methods. So into a separate .java file where we are calling it as page object class, right? So this is how you can actually achieve the, execute the test cases using page object class. So like this, if you have another web page, like multiple web pages you'll be having, right? So you'll create one page object class for one web page, right? So most of the time, when in real time also, like when you're working on the project, right? So 50% of the job, or we can even call it as 60-70% of the job will be, writing the page object classes. So once you write the page object classes and the corresponding action methods, right? So it becomes easy for anyone to write the test classes, right? Test classes is all about like, creating the test methods and calling those already created methods. That's all. Like this. The writing this 3 lines of code is simpler, right? So it becomes very easy for us to write the test classes once we have the page object classes defined, right? So for each web page, we'll have one page object class, and within it, we'll have the locators and also the action methods. And later, we'll call that in the test classes. So like we can have a number of page object classes, one for each web page, right? And then we can use that in the test classes whenever we require it, right? We just need to create the object for that particular web page object class, and then we just need to use those methods. That's all, right? So this is all about page object class, creating page object class without using PageFactory. Is that clear? All right. Now let's see using PageFactory how we can actually do this. Right. For that, what I'll do is nothing changes in the login page. Right. So nothing changes in the login page. What does login page underscore PF? PF is PageFactory. Now observe the difference. We are going to use the PageFactory now. So, and also notice, I'm not going to change anything in the login test. Our test case or test class will not change, right? Only thing is the page object class. We are changing page object class and we are using PageFactory in it. So we'll see what PageFactory is now. So coming to this. So this is a new class. Observe the login page is there without using PageFactory. we are using PageFactory now. I just had a copy of it. So now observe, we need WebDriver anyway, and then we'll have the constructor also. Within the constructor, I'm going to add one new line. So what I'll say is PageFactory is a class which will add it. PageFactory dot, there is a method called initElements of driver, the WebDriver instance, and the second parameter says this instance. Apply this to this in the sense this class is what we are saying. We'll come to this later, right? At the end we'll come to this, but remember this has to be called in the constructor. Then we'll go to the locators. So in the locators, what we'll do is we'll just take this out. Or for now, we'll comment it out and observe now what we'll do, how we actually locate the elements. So we'll have some new annotation called find by, and then we'll have XPath equal to, we'll get this XPath. And also, we need to capture this into the web element, actual web element. That's the username, right? You can also get this into the new line as well. Find by is an annotation. See, find by is a Selenium. So Selenium, it is coming from org.openqa.selenium.support.findby is a class, right? No, web element. And then you see that has to be captured into a web element, right? So what's the meaning of this? So when we say find by, @find by, it's an annotation, right? So what it does is XPath. We need to specify the how we wanted to find the web element. So I wanted to find the element using XPath equal to, so this everything has to be same like this. Find by is a keyword. XPath also you need to have it like this itself. So if it is ID, you'll have it as ID, class name, like that, right? Equal to, and then the actual XPath of it. That's it. And then we wanted to capture the web element of it. So you actually capture that like this, web element and an object for that. Like this, that's it. Like this, you'll have it for each object. So find by XPath equal to, for the password I'm writing XPath. Get the actual XPath here and place it here. And then web element, corresponding web element to capture the password. So this is how you need to find the elements, and then find by again XPath equal to, for the login button. Again, capture this web element. Login button. All right, now we can remove this. Or we'll keep it for the comparison. So now observe. So what did we do? In the locators, we made a change. So if you observe, we had earlier locator. We had the locator and actually had that captured into a by object. Now, what we are doing, we are using some new annotation called find by, find by, and within the braces, we are saying how to find the web element. Using XPath, we wanted to find the element equal to the actual XPath address. And once this is found, we wanted to capture that. Even when we do driver.findElement, we actually capture that into a web element, right? So in the same way, once this is found, using find by annotation, we are capturing that into a web element object. So this two lines completes the finding the element using the corresponding locator, right? So that's the syntax of find by. So find by, and we just need to pass the actual locator here to it, right? So this is how you need to write it and capture that into a web element. For example, if I wanted to find all the links in the web page, so how do you find it? Find by, I can use something called tag name, and to find all the links, if you remember what was the tag, anchor tag E, right? So then I can, this will be the list of web elements, because it will be more than one web element, right? So we'll capture that into list of web elements. and we'll call it as anchor tags, or we can call it as links, right? So this is just an example, right? Like this, you can find anything like @find by and then provide the actual locator name. If it is XPath tag name ID like that, and provide the value of it. And then you have to capture that. Immediately you have to capture that, right? This can be a single line or it can be in 2 lines as well. But this complete thing is one statement. That's what we need to remember, right? So find by and the actual locator equal to locator address, and then capture that into the web element. So this completes one statement, and this complete thing we call it as locator, right? Locator, or this is how we actually find the element. This is how you actually find the element. Now observe how you are gonna modify the action methods. So earlier we had set username, right? Now you don't need to do driver.findElement because this is not the locator. This is actual web element. So if you have the actual web element, so how do we actually write it? We just need to perform the action on it. That's how we used to do, right? Like web element, we capture it, and using the web element, we can just perform the action. That's what I'm doing here. We already have the web element, so we just need to use that to perform the action. That's it. That's the change in action methods. So let's actually, let me repeat it again. So what's the changes we made in the PageFactory? So the only change we made it was like the first change was in the constructor. So we used PageFactory.initElements and we passed driver and comma this. Fine. Then in the locators, what did we change? Instead of having the locators separately, having the locators captured into the object and then using them in the driver.findElement. So in single line, in single statement, we use like @find by annotation XPath equal to the address of it. Like this, you can use any locator here instead of XPath, right? But find by is, we have to use the same annotation @find by. And within the braces, you can use any locator you want. And after finding this element, you need to capture that into a web element object. This complete 2 lines is like one statement. So it locates the element, it finds the element, and also it assigns the elements to the corresponding web element, which we specify here, right? So 3 things will be happened here: locating the element, finds the element, and also web element username. It assigns to the username. So 3 things happens in this one statement. So once this is done, like this, we can have written this for all the web elements in the web page. So once we are done with this, we'll use that in the action methods. So how do we use that in the action methods? Is we already have the web element, so we just need to perform the actions on it by calling the write methods, right? So if it is input feed, we'll use endcase. If it is a button, we'll use click, and so on, right? That's it. So this is about the PageFactory. Now observe. So if we see here, we said we are finding the elements, right? So web element, fine. And here also we are using the web element. So if you observe, did we use anywhere driver, WebDriver instance? So till now, what we used to say, like WebDriver instance. Without WebDriver instance, you can't find the element, right? Only if you have the WebDriver instance, using that, we used to call the find element method, and that's the only way we used to find the elements, right? After locating the elements, that's the only method we have to find the elements on the web page, right? We used to use driver.findElements. But if you observe, in this case, we haven't used that. Forget about find element. We haven't used the driver even, right, in this code. But still we are saying that the element is located, and the element also we are using that in the methods also after after finding the element, right? So how is this possible without using the WebDriver instance? So let's come back to the statement. So this PageFactory.initElement. So what does this mean? So this method is very crucial, like in implementing the page object model, right? So this is used to initialize the elements of the page object, right? So all the web elements of the this page object. So this PageFactory.initElements method, when we call this, it initializes the elements, all the elements of the page object. That is the instance variables which are representing the instance variables which are representing the web elements, right? Which are annotated by find by. these web elements, which are annotated by find by, all these web elements will be, so these are also like instance variables. So these are declared at the class level, right? So we can call this as instance variables. All these instance variables which are representing these web elements. And how does it pick up, Selenium picks up this is by looking at the rate find by annotation. It knows these are the special instance variables, and it will pick up these elements and actually uses the WebDriver instance for this web elements to find the web elements, right? And what is this like init element? So why do we need to pass these two parameters? The first parameter is the WebDriver instance. So that will be used to find the web elements. This is common. Like without this driver, you can't find, right? So that is still true. That's the reason we are passing it as the first parameter. So that this init elements will know it has to use this WebDriver instance to find the elements. That's the first parameter. And how about this keyword, which is passed as second parameter? This refers to the current instance of the page object class, meaning it is used to initialize the web element fields within the class. Within this class, what are all the web element fields? So those elements will be picked up, and how those are picked up? By looking at the @find by annotation, those will be picked up and those will be initialized. So what happens when the init elements method is called? So it performs two actions, right? It scans the page object class. It actually scans this entire page object class, and then it actually finds the elements which are annotated with find by or other relevant annotations. Like we do have something called @find all, find bys, like that. So if it finds that annotations, so those web elements it scans, and then for each annotated field, right, it uses the provided WebDriver instance. So when we say this is what it happens. So all the @find by annotation elements will be picked up, right? So the entire page object class will be scanned, and all these web elements will be captured. How it knows it has to capture this web element? So using this annotation, which are represented using the @find by, all these web elements will be scanned, and this will be captured. And then this WebDriver instance, the WebDriver instance will pass it as a first parameter, right? So this will be used. This WebDriver instance will be used to locate the elements based on the locator strategy. Locator strategy in the sense this one: XPath, ID, class name, tag name, like that. Based on that, it will locate it. So that's the use of this, right? So with this single statement, that is what happening. But you don't need to know all that. Like that's all written. That's all internal logic of init elements method, right? Init elements is initializing the elements. So they just named it like this, like that. In short, they have named it as init elements, initializing the elements. So with this method call, which is present in the PageFactory class, so when we pass these two parameters, this WebDriver will be used to find the elements internally, and this indicates the, so scan this whole web page is what we are saying. This usually indicates the instance of the class, right? So this instance of the class, right? So scan through all the complete page of the class and locate the web elements which are annotated by find by, @find by, or the relevant annotations. And then once you find it, use this driver instance to find the elements. How do we find it again? Using the locator strategy defined for each find by web element, right? Using this locator strategy, find is what this init element says, or the init elements method has this logic to use this driver to find the web elements. And this actually, the second parameter actually is used to actually scan through the page object class and get these web elements, which are annotated with find by. Once it gets the list of web elements, then this driver will be used to locate the elements using this locator strategy, which we actually provided for which each web element. So entire thing will be done with this single line with this method call init elements. So is that clear? Understood? Please confirm in the chat box. All right. So that is what it is, right? So if you observe, we actually earlier we had the locators, and then we use the locators in the driver.findElement method. But now we even remove that as well. We don't need to have the locator separately. We had this statement with which the element will be found, right? So this actually replaced the driver.findElement method itself and also the locator. So the locator and also driver.findElement, locator and finding the element, all has been replaced. Everything has been replaced with one statement. And this web element will be used in the action methods to perform the actions. And all this is happened with this single line, PageFactory.initElements. So without using PageFactory, we used to do like that earlier. So when PageFactory was not introduced, right? So once this PageFactory was introduced, we can we can use this from that time. Like the job has become simpler. We just need to call this in the constructor once for each page object class. So in the constructor, after initializing this driver, we just need to call this PageFactory.initElements. That's all. Once we do that, the rest of the part will be the same, like locating the elements using the find by annotation. This also is very easy. These are like one statement, right? So if you can practice it, then you'll feel it very much easier, right? Find by and then pass the XPath like this. So there is another representation of it. So let me show you that as well. How equal to how dot XPath using so we can use like this as well. I just commented out the earlier one, and you can have like this as well. Now let me put it here. So this was the earlier one, old one, right? So we even have the another representation of find by. So you can mention it like this. How is a variable, and h which how with the uppercase letter is a class, enumeration class, and we need to use the how we wanted to find the element. How dot XPath, how dot ID, like that. So if you observe how dot, it will give you CSS ID, name, link text, partial link text, tag name, and so on, right? So like this, you will provide the actual value by which you wanted to find, and then comma, you'll pass the second one, like using equal to input like this, right? So, oh, I think we didn't run this, right? So page with PageFactory, let's first run this. For this, we need to actually provide the, we'll create the class, we'll create the test.ng XML. Okay, actually, so if you observe, so we can't run this. This is a login page. We have to run the test case always, right? So once we are done with this, right? So we will come to this later. First, we'll run this with this find by. So whatever we have written as a page factory, we wanted to test this, right? We haven't tested. So the explanation is done. We haven't done this. So the test class, what we said, so it has to remain the same. See, I'm not touching anything here, right? We'll run the same, but instead of this login page was without page factory, right? So we wanted to run it with page factory. We wanted to see it with page factory, right? So I just modified this. Excuse me. So underscore PF is my page factory class. This is my page factory class, right? Now observe. So that's it. I just created the object for page factory class. See, I just commented out the earlier one. I'm creating the object for page factory class. That's it. Run the test class as is. So earlier we did not use page factory. Now we use page factory. In a different class, we created the page factory page of the class. So that class object we have created. That's it. Other than that, we did not change anything in the test class. See, the test is done, and you can see test run one and one is passed, right? So nothing changed. Only thing change was like the way of locating the web elements and how we use the page factory. Which one looks simpler? So definitely page factory, right? So even in the real time, we use the PageFactory. Most of the companies, organizations, they will use the like this only, PageFactory, right? And this is how we actually locate the elements as well using the find by annotation. Now we'll see this. Let's come back to this. Find by. This is another representation of find by. So both are same. So if you look at the top one, so this is very much equivalent to this, but this is another representation. So even in like in real-time projects or whenever in future, if you see this representation, so you should not think it of as a new one. So this is just the replace or equivalent of this find by XPath equal, right? So instead of that, we can actually mention that as a first parameter, like how equal to how dot XPath, and then using like this. So, but this is also very much similar to this one. But if you observe, if you compare it, so definitely the first one looks simpler, right? So we mostly use the first representation. But I'm just saying you that even if you look this representation somewhere, so you should not think that it is something new. It is very much equivalent to the one which we did, which we have created like find by, right? It is very much equivalent to this. So just remember that. That's all. So this is all about PageFactory, and this is all about page object model. Very important even in the interview perspective as well. Why we need page object model? What is page object model and why we need it? Why we need it to have it in our project? And also, what is PageFactory? Why we need PageFactory? Why we wanted to use PageFactory? And also, the statement also, the meaning of the statement. What happens when we call PageFactory.initElements? Or they'll give you this code and they'll ask you directly without using WebDriver instance, how are we actually finding the web elements? So we have to explain it like this, right? So init elements have the logic of, when we pass it that WebDriver, and this actually represents this instance of the class, and all the web elements which are actually annotated with which are annotated with find by will be picked up, will be scanned for this entire page object class, and then those web elements will be actually used with this WebDriver. So we'll actually look using this locator strategy, we'll find the elements, and we actually have this web elements initialized with this locator strategy using this WebDriver instance. For all the web elements, this will be repeated. So that logic has been written in the init elements. So that's the reason we don't need to use driver.findElement explicitly, but that has been done implicitly or internally within the init elements method. Hope that is clear. Any questions on page object model or PageFactory? Okay then. So if you don't have any other questions, then we can wrap up the session. And maybe in the next session, we'll actually start the project framework.